Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Turor Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Vakibalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatir Anyata Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to do a very special program. Last night was the occasion of Krishna's performing the Rasa Leela. So tonight's recitation will be a summary of the Rasa Leela as depicted in the Srimad Bhagavatam and is presented in the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust version of the 10th canto. We begin with the mantra Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this Rasa Leela chapter is actually 5 chapters. And according to Srila Prabhupada's writings, he says that out of the 335 chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto, these 5 chapters dealing with the Rasa Leela are the most confidential of all the 335 chapters. And out of those 5 chapters, chapter 31, the Gopi Gita, is the most confidential. And after hearing the summary, we're going to narrate the translations, 19 verses of the Gopi Gita. So let us begin. The first chapter, chapter 29, is entitled Krishna and the Gopis Meet for the Rasa Dance. This chapter describes how Lord Sri Krishna, intending to enjoy the Rasa Dance, engaged in arguments and counter-arguments with the gopis. Then there is a description of the beginning of the Rasa Dance and the Lord's pastime of disappearing from the midst of the gopis. Remembering the promise Krishna had made to the gopis when he had stolen their clothes a year earlier, Lord Krishna employed his Yogamaya potency and manifested himself the desire to enjoy pastimes during an autumn night, known as Sharad Purnima. Thus Krishna began to play his transcendental flute. And when the gopis heard the sound of Krishna's flute, the impulses of Cupid were violently aroused within them, and they immediately abandoned all their household duties and hastily went to see Krishna. All the gopis had purely spiritual bodies, but when some of the husbands of the gopis and other family members stopped the young girls from going, Lord Krishna arranged for them to temporarily exhibit material bodies which they then left at the sides of their husbands. And in this way they deceived their relatives and went off to meet Krishna. When the gopis came before Krishna, he asked them, "Why have you come? It is not good for you to travel to such a place in the dead of night, for this forest is full of violent creatures. Your husbands and children will soon come searching after you to bring you home and engage you once again in your household duties. After all, the prime religious duty of a woman is to serve her husband and children. You should know that for a respectable woman, to consort with a paramour is totally contemptible and sure to obstruct her progress to heaven. Moreover, one develops pure love for me, not by physical proximity, but by hearing topics connected with me, by viewing my deity form in the temple, by meditating upon me, and by faithfully chanting my glories. Therefore, all of you would do best to return home. But the gopis were crestfallen to hear all this, and after crying a little bit, they replied with some anger in their tone. "O Krishna, it is very unfair for you to reject young girls who have abandoned everything in their lives and who have come to you with the exclusive desire to serve you. For you see, by serving our husbands and children, we receive only pain, whereas by serving you, the dearmost soul of all living beings, we shall perfectly fulfill the true religious duty of the self. Indeed, what woman would not deviate from her prescribed duties as soon as she hears your flute song and sees your form, which enchants the three worlds? Just as the Supreme Lord Vishnu protects the demigods, you destroy the unhappiness of the people of Vrindavan. Therefore, you should immediately relieve the torment we have felt because of separation from you." Wanting to please the gopis, Lord Krishna, who is always satisfied in himself, responded to their appeals by playing with them in various pastimes. But when this show of attention made them a little proud, he humbled them by suddenly disappearing from the arena of the Rasa dance. And as we learn from Prabhupada's writings, when Krishna disappeared from all the gopis, he did not disappear from Radharani. Indeed, Radharani took Krishna deeper into the forest. And why did she do that? Because she was feeling, I'm not getting enough special attention. So Krishna followed after her. And we learn from Prabhupada's teachings that Radha and Krishna, Radha is the central figure of the Rasa dance. Without Radha, the Rasa dance cannot be performed. So there were thousands and thousands of gopis, as you see the picture behind me. But in the middle was Radha and Krishna. So let's go to the next chapter, the gopis' search for Krishna. This chapter describes how the gopis, tormented through the long night of separation from Krishna, wandered like madwomen from forest to forest in search of Krishna. So when Krishna suddenly disappeared from the arena of the Rasa dance, the gopis, their minds fully absorbed in thoughts of him, began looking for Krishna in the various forests. They looked from him, from all the moving and non-moving creatures. They asked for news of Krishna's whereabouts. Finally, they became so distraught that they began imitating Krishna's pastimes. So some of those pastimes they imitated: lifting of Govardhan Hill, the killing of Putana. So many of the pastimes that Krishna had already performed, they were acting them out themselves. Later, While wandering in a corner of the forest, the gopis saw Krishna's footprints, which were mixed with another gopi. Seeing those footprints perturbed them greatly, and they declared that that gopi must have worshipped Krishna with unusual excellence, since she had been privileged to associate with him in seclusion. And that gopi is Srimati Radharani. And in the Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami deliberately did not utter Radha's name. And why? Because Shukadev knew that if I begin to talk about Radha, I will go into transcendental ecstasy and I won't finish the recitation of Bhagavatam. So Shukadev's service prevented him from even uttering Radha's name. So in the Bhagavatam, the reference is Anya Radhita. The gopi said at this time, as was just mentioned, oh, that gopi who Krishna left with, she must have worshipped Krishna better than us. And that is the meaning of Radha, the one who worships Krishna the best. Further along the path, the gopis came to a place where they could no longer see Radharani's footprints. They then concluded that Krishna must have taken Radha onto his shoulders. In another place, they noticed that Krishna's footprints were showing only his toes, and thus the gopis concluded Krishna must have been picking flowers with which to decorate his beloved. In yet another spot, the gopis saw signs that led them to imagine that Krishna had been tying the locks of Radha's hair. All these thoughts brought transcendental pain to the minds of the gopis. Because of the special attention she received from Krishna, Radha began to consider herself the most fortunate of all women in the universe. She told him that she could walk no further and that he would have to carry her on his shoulders. But just then, as Radha attempted to get on Krishna's shoulders, Krishna disappeared from her sight. Radharani, extremely troubled, then began looking everywhere for Krishna. Finally, she met up with all the other gopis, and she related to them what had happened. All the gopis then went out to look for Krishna in the forest, going as far as the moonlight reached. But in the end, they were unsuccessful. So they went back to the shore of the Yamuna and simply sang Krishna's glories in utter helplessness. So this is what I call the original Namahat program. The gopis on the banks of the Yamuna, sitting together, chanting Krishna's glories. Prabhupada points out that even in the case of Radha, Krishna was teaching everyone that his devotees should not become proud. As the gopis had become proud, Krishna left them. When Radhaji also became proud, Krishna disappeared from her as well. So this demonstrates another aspect, that Krishna is Svarat, completely independent. So that this example of Krishna is very, very significant. That even he's with the gopis, he is detached. Even he's with Radharani, still Krishna is detached. That's one of the opulences of Krishna, Vairagya. He can be completely detached. Chapter 31, the songs of separation by the gopis, or as everybody refers to it as Gopi Gita. This chapter relates how the gopis, overwhelmed by feelings of separation from Krishna, sat down on the bank of the Yamuna and began praying for his audience and singing his glories. Because the gopis had dedicated their minds and very lives to Krishna, they were beside themselves with transcendental pain of separation. But their crying, which appears like evidence of misery, actually shows their exalted state of transcendental bliss. So this point is very similar to Ram and Sita. When Ram and Sita were separated, for those that 1 year practically, they both felt separation from each other. And we see in the Ramayana, Ram is crying out, Sita is crying out. But Prabhupada instructs us, don't misunderstand. Externally, it appears that they're suffering, but actually, it is the highest transcendental ecstasy. This was the mood of Lord Chaitanya. He also had that same mood of feeling intense separation from Krishna. So, Lord Chaitanya's teaching is that separation from Krishna and feeling that intense separation is actually a higher ecstasy than actual union with Krishna. Now, this is something above our understanding. It doesn't make any sense. But this is how Prabhupada and our Vaishnava acharyas instruct us. That even though externally it looks like they're crying and suffering, actually they're experiencing the highest transcendental ecstasy. Each of the gopis began addressing Lord Sri Krishna according to her individual mode of ecstasy, and they all prayed for his mercy. So that line indicates that every one of us has a unique, individual relationship with Krishna that is special. And self-realization, what is the pinnacle of self-realization? Discovering what is your unique, individual relationship with Krishna. That's why we chant. Each mantra is getting us closer to when it will be revealed. This is your eternal relationship with Krishna. As the pastimes of Krishna spontaneously arose in the minds of the gopis, they sang their song, which relieves the agony of those suffering from the burning pain of separation from Krishna, and which bestows supreme auspiciousness. In their separation from Krishna, the gopis considered a single moment to be an entire age. Even when they had previously seen Krishna, they had found the blinking of their eyelids intolerable, for it blocked their vision of him for a fraction of a second. The ecstatic sentiments for Lord Krishna that the gopis express may appear like symptoms of lust, but in reality, they are manifestations of their pure desire to satisfy the Supreme Lord's spiritual senses. There is not even the slightest trace of lust in these moods of the gopis. This is explained at the end in the final chapter of this Rasa Leela, when Parikshit Maharaj asks Shukadev some questions to clear up doubts. And we learn this from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the gopis' desire is not for their own sense gratification. The gopis wanted to satisfy Krishna's senses, because Krishna is known as Rishi Kesha. So the gopis only what makes it not lust is they have no personal desire. Their only desire is to satisfy Krishna. And similarly, Krishna has no lust because his only desire is to satisfy the desires of Radha and the gopis. And there are other reasons why there is no tinge of lust in this Rasa Leela pastime. The next chapter is entitled Reunion. This chapter describes how Krishna manifested himself in the midst of the gopis who had become extremely disturbed by separation from him. After Krishna consoled them, they expressed to him their deep feelings of ecstasy. The gopis, having shown in various ways their great eagerness to see Krishna, who is the attractor of Cupid, Madana Mohan, Krishna appeared before them once again, wearing silken yellow garments and a beautiful flower garland. Some of the gopis, overwhelmed with ecstasy at seeing Krishna, grasped his hands. Others placed his arm on their shoulders, and others accepted the remnants of betel nut that Krishna had chewed. Thus, they all served Krishna. One gopi, impelled by loving anger towards Krishna, bit her lip and looked askance at him. Because the gopis were so attached to Krishna, they were not satiated even by continuously gazing at him. One of them placed Krishna within her heart, closed her eyes, and began embracing him within herself again and again, and thus became absorbed in transcendental bliss, just like a yogi. In this way, the pain the gopis had felt because of separation from Krishna was dispelled. So, at this time when Krishna returned, he told them that I left you and I became invisible to you, but I was watching you. And Krishna was very, very impressed that even though Krishna left them, they did not give up Krishna. They stayed and they prayed their hearts out with their Gopi Gita. So Krishna at this time said, I can see that your love for me is beyond compare. Krishna said, actually, your love for me is so great, I cannot repay you. This is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. We all know, or we all should know, the Bhagavad Gita shloka, Ye yatang mang prapadyante, tangs tataiva vajamyaham. As devotees surrender, Krishna rewards. But that verse in Bhagavad Gita is not in the Gopis' Bhagavad Gita. Because at this time, Krishna says, I can't repay you. Not only that, I cannot repay you even in a lifetime of Brahma. You will have to be satisfied with your own exalted position because your love for me is so great, I cannot repay you. Next, Lord Krishna went to the bank of the Yamuna in the company of the gopis, who are his internal potencies. So this is important. At the beginning it said that Krishna manifested this rasa dance by Yoga Maya. The material world is under the jurisdiction of Mahamaya, Durga Devi. But this rasa dance, being completely spiritual, is under the internal spiritual Yoga Maya potency. Completely different type of experience. The gopis then made a seat for Krishna out of their shawls. And after he had sat down, they enjoyed with him by gesturing amorously. The gopis still felt hurt that Krishna had disappeared, and so he explained to them why he had done so. He further told them that he had come under the exclusive control of their loving devotion and would forever remain indebted to them. Same thing, if we have time today, we're going to sing Damodarashtaka. And there is that one word, Bhakti Badham. Yashoda could not tie up Krishna with rope. Even if Yashoda had brung all the ropes in the universe, it would still be 2 fingers too short. Why? Because Krishna cannot be tied by anything other than pure love. That's the only thing that can conquer Krishna. And gopis, Yashoda, and especially Radharani, they have that exclusive, pure love for Krishna that can capture him. So we just heard Krishna is Madan Mohan, the attractor of Cupid. But Radha is Madan Mohan Mohini, the one who can attract the all-attractive Krishna. Final chapter in the 5 chapters, entitled The Rasa Dance. This chapter describes Lord Krishna's Rasa Dance, which he enjoyed with his beloved girlfriends in the forests along the Yamuna River. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is most expert in the knowledge of transcendental moods. In the company of the gopis, who were tightly bound to him by the ropes of affection and totally dedicated to his service, Krishna expanded himself into numerous forms. The gopis became intoxicated with their enthusiasm to enjoy the Rasa dance, and thus they began satisfying Krishna's senses by singing, dancing, and gesturing amorously. The sweet voices of the gopis filled all the directions. At this point, I give you a blessing. May you one day hear this actual sweet voices of the gopis in the Rasa dance. Prabhupada himself said, it's on tape, I have the tape. The goal of the Krishna consciousness movement is to become one of the Gopi Janas. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarad Hari. If you want it, you can get it. That's why you have to chant. You can't buy a ticket to the Rasa dance. You cannot see it on YouTube. No. This is what is required. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Even after Lord Krishna manifested himself in numerous forms, each gopi was standing next to her. Each gopi thought that Krishna was standing next to her alone. So a miracle. There are thousands and thousands of gopis, thousands and thousands of Krishna, but each is experiencing, I'm alone with Krishna. Isn't Krishna wonderful? Gradually, the gopis became fatigued from the continuous dancing and singing, and each of them placed her arm on the shoulder of the Krishna standing beside her. Some gopis smelled and kissed Krishna's arm, which bore the fragrance of the lotus and was anointed with sandalwood paste. Others put Krishna's hand on their bodies, and yet others gave Krishna pleasure by embracing him lovingly. Lord Krishna, being the supreme absolute truth, is the only enjoyer and object of enjoyment. Although he is one without a second, Krishna expands himself into many forms to increase his personal pastimes. Therefore, great scholars say that Krishna's Rasa Leela is just like a child playing with its own reflection in a mirror. Sri Krishna is Atmaram, self-satisfied, and fully endowed with inconceivable transcendental opulences. When Krishna exhibits such pastimes as the Rasa Leela, all living beings, from Lord Brahma down to the blade of grass, becomes merged in the ocean of astonishment. When Maharaj Parikshit heard the narration of Krishna's conjugal pastimes with the gopis, which superficially resembled the activities of lusty, wanton persons, Parikshit expressed a doubt to the great devotee Shukadeva Goswami, and Shukadev dispelled this doubt. Quote, "Since Sri Krishna is the absolute enjoyer, such pastimes as these can never be contaminated by any fault. And if anyone other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead tries to enjoy such type of pastimes, one will suffer the same fate that someone other than Lord Rudra would suffer if one attempted to drink an ocean of poison. Can anyone imitate Lord Shiva when he shrunk the hala and drank it, and he got the Nilakant, the 3 lines? Who can imitate Lord Shiva? Nobody. Moreover, even one who only thinks of imitating Rasa Leela will certainly suffer misfortune. The Supreme Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna, is present within the hearts of all living entities as their indwelling witness. When out of his mercy, Krishna exhibits his intimate pastimes to his devotees. These activities are never besmirched by mundane imperfection. Any living being who hears of the spontaneous, loving attraction which the gopis felt for Lord Krishna will have all one's desires for material sense gratification destroyed at the root, and one will develop natural propensity for serving the Supreme Lord, the spiritual master, and the Lord's devotees. Now today, as I was having my brunch, I was listening to my recording of Krishna book, the section where Shukadev answers Parikshit's doubts about Rasa Leela. And one thing that I found very significant, another reason why Krishna is faultless in dancing with the so-called wives of others, is that Krishna is in everyone's heart. Krishna is already the husband of everyone because the soul is feminine. You think of yourself as man and women, and that is illusion. The soul is Prakriti. Prakriti is feminine. That's why it said a couple of times, Krishna is the only Purusha or enjoyer. So Krishna is already within everyone's heart. So in the case of this rasa dance, instead of remaining in the heart, he just came outside and danced with the gopi. You got a problem with that? He's already inside. He's already the closest thing to every living entity. Every living entity belongs to Krishna. So, in the case of this, Krishna decided, all right, I'll come out. Same way in the spiritual world. There is no Paramatma in the spiritual world. There's no need for Paramatma. Why? Prabhupada mentions this. That because everybody is seeing Krishna in the spiritual world, there's no separation, there's no distinction. So there's no need. Super soul is needed because we have a material body. That's why super soul is, when the living entity goes back to Godhead, people ask, what happens to Supersoul? That's explained by Prabhupada. That Supersoul enters the Brahma Jyoti, and the living entity goes to the spiritual kingdom and associates either with Krishna or Narayan or Ram or Nrsimha, like that. Okay, I see we have time. Very good. So here is the English translation to the Gopi Gita. O beloved Daita, your birth in this land of Vraja has made it exceedingly glorious, and thus Indira, the goddess of fortune, only resides here. And it is only for your sake that we, your devoted servants, maintain our lives. We have been searching everywhere for you, so please show yourself to us. O Lord of love, Suratanath, in beauty, your glance excels the whirl of the finest, most perfectly formed lotus within the autumn pond. O bestower of benedictions, Varada, you are killing us maidservants who have given themselves to you freely, without any price. Is this not murder? O greatest of personalities, Rishabha, repeatedly you have saved us from all kinds of danger, such as from poisoned water caused by Kaliya, from the terrible man-eater, Aga, from the great rains of Indra, from the wind demon, Trinavarta, from the fiery thunderbolt of Indra, from the bull demon, Arishta, and the son of Mayadanava. Actually, you are not the son of the Gopi Yashoda, O friend Sake, but rather the indwelling witness in the hearts of all embodied souls. Because Lord Brahma prayed for you to come and protect the universe, you have now appeared in the Satvata dynasty. O best of the Vrishnis, Vrishni Durya, your lotus-like hand, which holds the hand of the goddess of fortune, grants fearlessness to those who approach your feet out of fear of material existence. O lover, Kanta, please place that wish-fulfilling lotus hand on our heads. O you who destroy the suffering of Vraja's people, Vraja Janarti Han, O hero of all women, Veera Yoshitang, your smile shatters the false pride of your devotees. Dear friend, Sake, please accept us as your maidservants and show us your beautiful lotus face. Your lotus face your lotus feet destroys the past sins of all embodied souls who surrender unto you. Thus, those feet follow after the cows in the pastures and are the eternal abode of the goddess of fortune. Since you once put those feet on the heads of the Kaliya serpent, please place them on our breasts and tear away the lust in our hearts. So that's significant. Gopis are very clever. They say, you put your feet on Kaliya and he's a demon. So won't you put your feet on us? Gopis are very, very, very smart. O lotus-eyed one, Pushkarekshana, your sweet voice and charming words, which attract the minds of the intelligent, are bewildering us more and more. O dear hero, Veera, please revive your maidservants with the nectar of your lips. The nectar of your words and the description of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions, and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. So this verse is the whole purpose of Namahat. We simply want to hear the glories of Krishna and become benedicted. Your smiles, your sweet loving glances, the intimate pastimes and confidential talks we enjoyed with you, all these are auspicious to meditate, and they touch our hearts. But at the same time, O deceiving cheater, Kuaka, they very much agitate our minds. Dear Master, Natha, dear lover, Kanta, when you leave the cowherder village to herd the cows, our minds are disturbed with the thought that your feet, which are more beautiful than a lotus, will be pricked by the spiked husks of grain and the rough grass and plants. At the end of the day, you repeatedly show us your lotus face, covered with dark blue locks of hair and thickly powdered with dust. Thus, O hero, Vira, you arouse lusty desires in our minds. Your lotus feet, which are worshipped by Lord Brahma, fulfill the desires of all who bow down to them. They are the ornament of this earth, and they give the highest satisfaction. In times of danger, they are the appropriate object of meditation. So just like I have mentioned previously, the yogis, they meditate on Paramatma in the heart. But devotees, they meditate on Krishna's lotus feet. O lover, Ramana, O destroyer of anxiety, Adihan, please put those lotus feet upon us. O hero, Vira, kindly distribute to us the nectar of your lips, which enhances conjugal pleasure and which vanquishes grief. That nectar is thoroughly relished by your vibrating flute and makes people forget any other attachment. Now, elsewhere it is mentioned that the gopis are a little envious of the flute. And the gopis say, and after all, the flute is a male. What's going on here? We should get the nectar of Krishna's lips, not the flute. We deserve it. Oh Krishna, when you go off to the forest during the day, a tiny fraction of a second becomes like a millennium for us because we cannot see you. And even when we can eagerly look upon your beautiful face, so lovely with its adornment of curly locks, our pleasure is hindered by our eyelids, which were fashioned by some foolish creator. So they're blaspheming Lord Brahma for making the eyes blink. Dear infallible one, O Ochuta, you know very well why we have come here. O cheater, Kitava, who else but you would abandon young women who come to see him in the middle of the night, enchanted by the long, loud song of his flute? Just to see you, we have completely rejected our husbands, children, ancestors, brothers, and other relatives. Our minds are repeatedly bewildered as we think of the intimate conversations we had with you in secret, and we feel the rise of lust in our hearts, and remember your smiling face, your loving glances, your broad chest, your chest, which is the resting place of the goddess of fortune, Shri Vatsa. Thus we experience the most severe hankering for you. O dear one, Anga, your all-auspicious appearance vanquishes the distress of those living in the forests of Vraja. Our minds long for your association. Please give to us just a bit of that medicine which counteracts the disease in your devotees' hearts. O dearly beloved Priya, your lotus feet are so soft that we place them gently on our breasts, fearing that your feet will be hurt. Our life indeed rests only in you. Our minds, therefore, are filled with anxiety that your tender feet might be wounded by pebbles as you roam about on the forest path. So that is the narration, summary narration of this Rasa Leela. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,